Hey everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of Ask Kate with Kate Deary and Kitty. Obviously, you know who we are already. Not that we're these big famous celebrities or anything.
Speak for yourself.
We've just talked for the last hour. We were supposed to start at 7:30, but we had a good catch up and a good chin wag. But today we're talking about temperature and pulse and how that relates or is one measure of a strong metabolism. And, I think the problem with the fitness industry is that so many of these other diets don't look at things like temperature and pulse. Their main goal is for you to lose weight on the scales. And, I remember what it was like. I remember doing those diets where I'd eat 1,200 calories and I would barely sleep through the night and I was just exhausted all the time. And, not one of them ever got me to measure any of these things. Like they never got me to look at my sleep or my mood or my energy or my digestion or my menstrual cycle. And no one ever talked to me about temperature and pulse. Because we'll talk about this more as we go along, but there's things that you can use to, I guess you would say, measure your metabolism. So you've got the subjective and the objective measures, and the objective measures are your temperature and pulse, and your subjective measures are like sleep, digestion, mood, energy, menstrual cycle. And when all of those things are good and your temperature is, like closer to 37 degrees in the afternoon and your pulse is strong, then that's a good sign that you've got a, really well functioning, robust metabolism, and you should be able to, maintain a reasonably, I guess, leanish body. Kate and I were just talking now, saying, I can't believe I'm eating so many calories now. And I don't, I strength train and I walk Winston when I can, but I don't have this need to go, oh, fuck, I need to do exercise to burn calories to maintain my body. So we're going to dive a bit deeper into the temperature and the pulse and what it means and what it can tell you about your body and your metabolism and how you actually measure it. So maybe, Kate, let's start with, because I think there's a bit of a misconception out there about pulse. I get a lot of clients message me and go, yeah, but my pulse is really low. Like, isn't that really good? Like, doesn't that mean that I'm really fit? Like marathon runners and runners, they have really low resting pulses.
Correct. Okay, so let's just give a basis of like why we use temp and pulse, because yes, they're good numbers to let us know what is going on with you metabolically. So when your body is utilizing energy or calories well, you're going to produce heat as one of the waste products. And so what is going to happen is you're going to be warmer. And, for me, when I started this, it was, I never took my temperature unless I was sick. I don't know about you. It was just not something I ever did. Right. And so when I started to take my temperature, I was like 96. Now for you, that's like 35 something and change. So we do it in Fahrenheit here. And all of a sudden I realized my body was not producing heat well. I mean, I was super athletic and I thought I was doing all these things, but yet I was cold. I had cold hands and feet and I had a very cool body temperature. So what that was telling me was my body isn't utilizing energy well, and it's more in a very efficient state. My pulse was around 50-ish. So from a fitness point of view, that was great, right? I was very aerobically fit, which would show that my heart rate was very low. From a metabolic standpoint, that's not ideal. Ideally, you want to be around 75 to 90 beats per minute. And ideally, you want to be around 37.8 to 98.6 Fahrenheit, which is probably around 36.5 waking for you guys to 37 degrees Celsius. That's more ideal of what your body temperature and pulse should be versus cold and chilly and low pulse. So getting back to that initial question, low pulse is ideal for a marathon runner, for somebody who's doing endurance, athletics. If you have a super high metabolism and you are a marathon runner, your body's going to be burning an enormous amount of calories. I mean, you would literally have to eat every 30 minutes to just not be in a catabolic state. So your body knows that, and it's really hard for you to eat when you're running. I mean, you see marathon runners, and trying to win a race, they can't eat every 10, 20 minutes, right? And they're all very thin. Because that's basically how their body has set them up. You don't want to have a lot of muscle tissue if you're going to be running a long distance. You want to be super efficient cardiovascularly, though, so that your body can go long distances without burning everything off of you. So to do that, it kind of makes you more efficient. So there is a point to do that. And if you are an endurance athlete, you're going to have lower temperatures and you're going to have lower pulse. It's just what's going to happen to you. But if you want to maintain the highest metabolic rate, and if that's your goal, then utilizing those forms of activity is not ideal. And, you want to do things that are going to increase temperature and pulse. And usually that comes from the energy standpoint. So usually it means consuming more energy. And the best energy, as we know, are your sugar sources.
I think too, like when people like think about, you've got all these little cells and they make energy, and like think about them like powerhouses, like, and when you give them lots of energy and they're making it efficiently, they produce heat. It's a byproduct. So when they're not functioning very well, they don't produce heat. And if
you actually want to be inefficient when you produce energy. That means you want to use lots of sugars and carbs to produce, but when you're inefficient, you produce lots of waste products. And when I mean waste products, that's carbon dioxide, carbon dioxide, heat, and ATP. Those are going to be your waste products and what you're going to produce. But as you become more efficient, you will produce less of the waste products, right? And then you'll basically be at a lower metabolic standpoint.
And I think too, like, I can't remember who explained to me like this, like when your cells obviously require nutrients and oxygen to make energy. And when your pulse is low, they're not getting that, they're not getting what they need to produce the energy, which I think, well, they are, but like not enough. Like, like I think like I took my pulse because I'll just randomly take it, just because I don't really do it anymore because I feel good. And we were at the hospital with my grandma, and I said to the nurse, I was like, can you just take my temperature and pulse? And she took it, and I think my resting pulse was like 80, 85, and my temperature was close to 37. And I was expecting her to say to me, oh, gee, that's not very good. Like, because usually they would want you to have a low. She's like, oh, you must be really healthy and you look really strong. And I was like, oh, yeah, I am actually. It's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. And actually, if you go into the hospital, they understand, they will actually say, anywhere, they usually have like 70 to 90. They know that's a healthy level for your pulse. They know, but they might tell you if you had a 50 pulse they might go, you're really healthy, right?
Yeah.
You're super efficient and your heart's not beating as fast. And so, and from some people's point of view, that is a good thing, right? So from a metabolic standpoint, it's not ideal. And, and the whole goal of this line of eating is to raise your temp and pulse to ideal temperature and ideal pulse so that you are utilizing more energy, because that's what we want to teach you. And to do that, basically you need to eat more. And so, some people are always like, well, what does it mean when it rises, or what does it mean if I actually have a high temp and pulse and I eat food and it drops? Because a lot of things can happen. This isn't a black and white scenario, because everybody is going to come with a different level of health, and so it can mean different things for different people depending on what's going on with your body. So for instance, I have a client who is very hyperadrenaline and I think is in a very catabolic state, and so she's kind of like a skinny fat, and but not a big person, but she runs at a very high temperature. So we would look at that and go, oh, she's really healthy. Her pulse is low though, considering that. And so, but what starts happening, and so most people might look at that and go, oh, your temperature's good, you're utilizing energy well, she's in a hyperadrenaline state, so probably she's running on a lot of stress hormones, and stress hormones can produce a false temperature, because they are, yes, burning still lots of energy, but not an ideal state. And what you will see is when that person starts consuming enough food, the temperature will actually start dropping initially, because it's lowering the stress hormones. And I'm sure you've seen that as well in people. And so if you're ever eating food and that food lowers your temp and pulse, then whatever state you were in prior was running off stress hormones.
Yeah, we had a lady actually, she posted recently in the Facebook group, and she's got her own business, like another one that's just constantly go, go, go. And she was posting the same thing, that her temperature dropped after food. And it was funny, a few days later, because we've been working with her, and I was just like trying to say to her, like, you just need to have some downtime, you know, like you just go, you got all your kids and your business. And she actually wrote this big post saying, you know, I've realized now that pretty much my whole life I've been running on adrenaline. And, you know, I've started to learn to say no to things. You know, I've started to learn to, you know, I was sick on the weekend. My friend wanted to help her move. And I just said, look, I can't. I need to rest, you know. And she's learning to have downtime and let her body rest. So now she's finding that her energy is more constant and stable, rather than she's like this and then she's like this. And, you know, I think that probably so many women are like that.